From the moment Brad Thor exploded onto the thriller scene with his dazzling debut, The Lions of Lucerne, it was clear there was a new superstar in the genre. Called one of the best thrillers ever by Barnes & Noble and praised by Thor's iconic peers, Lions introduced Scot Harvath, a dangerous and resourceful protagonist without equal. Over the ensuing decades, Thor has conquered the bestseller list as Harvath has faced off against terrorists, rogue nations, international conspiracies, and world superpowers, facing down all of America's enemies, both foreign and domestic. Now, in the wake of the events of Backlash, Harvath is a man in exile, consumed by pain and guilt and paralyzed by unfathomable loss. All he wants is to be left alone, to drink, to forget, maybe to die, but they wouldn't let him. An old enemy, $100 million bounty, a race across Europe with a lethal and beautiful ally. With Near Dark, his 20th novel, Brad Thor has done the improbable and written his best novel to date.
Hey, I'm Brad Thor, and you should be watching the Crew Reviews.
Boys, we want to welcome Mr. Brad Thor to the Crew Reviews. Brad, thanks for coming on the show.
How are you, good sir?
Yeah. Author and airline pilots, the only people that can drink on the job.
That's awesome.
Brad, you could throw Secret Service agents in there too.
Oh, I hope not.
There you go.
Well, Brad, last year at this time, I thought Backlash, book number 19, was the crowning achievement of the Harvath series. It had so many fantastic elements and almost a feral intensity to it, and more than anything that had come before. And yet, incredibly, I feel Near Dark surpasses it. So wow. If you could give our audience maybe a little thumbnail of the story, and also tell us how in the hell did you once again surpass yourself with novel number 20?
Well, I can answer all of those questions, and I'll tell you how the idea for the book came about. So last year I did Backlash, and a retailer, one of our biggest retailers, said, would you do a bonus chapter so we can have a special edition book that would encourage people to buy this special edition from us? Mm-hmm. And I always say yes to my business partners. I'm not in the business of saying no. If you're being kind enough to want to put my book front and center in the store and you want a way to sell even more of the books, yes, the answer is yes. However, I can help you. So I got to the end of writing Backlash. I went, oh, why did I say yes? I'm burnt out. I wrote the book. It was a real grind. And I was joking with my publicist. He said, what do you mean you're doing a bonus chapter? It's a Brad Thor book. Every chapter that needs to be in the book is already in the book. Mm. So I was thinking about, my kids love the Marvel movies, and we always have to stay for the credits roll, because then you get that scene that kicks up right at the end.
Heck yeah.
So I thought, okay, I can do a scene maybe that has nothing to do with what's in the book. And so a little bit of bourbon, which Daddy calls putting his thinking cap on. Yeah. And I came up with this idea that some guy would be in the Far East with a really eccentric character taking out $100 million bounty on Harvath. And that's what I did. My editor loved it, said it was the best chapter she'd ever read. And we sent it off to the retailer, and I figured, okay, some of this stuff can be difficult because you want the retailers to be happy, but you don't want your fans to go, wait a second, I would have bought that book if I'd known. It's like buying a car and getting air conditioning thrown in for free here and nobody else gives it to you. But I made the deal that, okay, I could put it on my website after a certain amount of time so everybody get to read it. Anyway, like the Marvel Universe, though, this bounty for $100 million on my protagonist, once I birth it into the universe, it exists. I can't do like the soap opera trope of my protagonist wakes up and goes, woo, good thing that was just a dream. $100 million bounty would have been a big deal. So it had to be the starting point, jumping off point for this year for Near Dark. So I was stuck with it. It was in the universe. I had to use it. And what's really tough is in that bonus chapter, the guy who pays for the contract says, don't just give it to one assassin, give it to all your assassins. And whoever gets the Scot Harvath first and kills him gets the money. So I'm like, okay, great. That's where I'm going to start this book. And it was really tough because the way I've built Harvath over the years and all of his training and all of his expertise, you're not going to find a guy like Harvath if he doesn't want to be found. If he knows there's a bounty on him. So either the first assassin gets him and that's it, that's the world's shortest book, or he disappears. And that was my problem. So I reached out to a guy that's in my network, really interesting intel guy. And I said, if you found out there was one of these on you, what would you do? And he had a couple of interesting ideas, but one of the things he said to kill the contract, you got to kill the person who put the contract out on you. So you got to reverse engineer this thing. So I spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, how does Harvath get on this path? And he's at a real low point in his life. I mean, he's debating, it's a slow motion suicide, a lot of alcohol. He's deciding what he wants to do and all this kind of stuff. And I came up with something and I just thought, okay, I'm being fearless now with killing off certain characters. It's just, you don't know when you pick up one of my books, if one of the characters you've loved from past books is going to make it, not make it. And normally the characters are named after people I know. So I've got like friends that are sweating it out and buying
Don't kill me. Don't kill me, Brad.
Yeah, no, I milk it. I'm like the schoolyard bully. I mean, I get a lot of good steak dinners out of them.
Nice Christmas present.
Yeah, no, you should see some of the nice bottles of bourbon I get just because they don't want to die. So anyway, the idea behind Near Dark is that Harvath is, the flame of his humanity is almost extinguished. And this book is going to, if you've never read a Brad Thor book before, you can pick up any one. You don't have to read them in order. I've done 19 with this protagonist, one with an all-female Delta Force team where my protagonist made a quick little cameo. You can start with Near Dark. You don't have to worry about starting 19 books ago. You jump in at Near Dark, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So $100 million bounty, he doesn't want to be found. The minute he ditches his electronics and he stays away from facial recognition, you're not going to find him. And I know that. The guys that kind of consult on my stuff know that. So the trick became, how do I find a thread that Harvath can pull on to lead him towards, through the cutouts, to the person who put out the contract on him? And that's the idea behind this. And with nobody that he can trust, because he doesn't know who's kind of giving out information about him, he does stumble across of course, because she's not going to be ugly, a gorgeous Norwegian intelligence services operative who has a past just as troubled and a life just as broken as his own. And he ends up trusting her, and the two of them work together. And that's kind of the kernel of what this book is about. I got to throw in lots of cool locations that I love around the world. Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy. In France is a place I've been to several times. I've always wanted to put in a book, and we did. And we got it on the artwork on the cover and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's gorgeous.
Well, Brad, if you really want to show some balls next book, make it an ugly girl.
Oh, yeah. Nobody believe it.
I know. I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's part of his tag. Well, you just alluded to it a little bit. In Near Dark, we see Harvath closer to his breaking point than ever before in any of the previous books, and the pain and the emotional suffering from so much loss is really paralyzing for him. So how conscious was your effort to create a razor's edge balance between a functional and a dysfunctional operator?
Well, so it was a pain in the ass, just like Backlash was. I took some real flyers on the last two books, particularly with what I was revealing about Harvath, my protagonist, emotionally, because the people, men and women, who I sit around and chat with, and I buy a lot of pictures of beer and in dinners and things like this, because I want to know more about what they do in their day-to-day lives and what work is like, either at Langley or at the unit at Fort Bragg. Not a group that normally sits around and talks about their feelings a lot, the people that I work with.
Right.
So it's the challenge for me on these last two books. It was how much of what he's feeling inside, what he's thinking, not even thinking so much as feeling, where's the line? You know, where do you go over and you're actually turning your readers off? Thankfully, I didn't find that line. I did not turn the readers off. In fact, if it did anything, it drew them closer to Harvath, increased my readership. So I found this right balance, but you're all writers, you know this. There is no manual that says on chapter 3, you got to do this. And then page 453, do this. You are really trying to pull order out of chaos, and you don't know until the book's done if it worked. So every single word I agonized over, every sentence, wanting it to be perfect, going back and redoing it and saying, is Harvath is he feeling this too intensely? Is he not feeling it enough? What would you really be feeling in this situation? And it's not all about feeling. I mean, my books are action and all that kind of stuff. But I found that the more risks I'm willing to take as an author by revealing more of kind of the main character's inner workings, the more I'm hearing from fans and readers that they're loving it. So it is a big risk that I've taken, and it's one that I still am not fully comfortable with because I haven't done it to this degree, but the feedback I'm getting is do it more. So that's rewarding.
Yeah.
Well, he's I mean, he's a fictional character, but you make him human. You know, he's not this shot and he kills 15 people, but he, you know, he's human qualities and people can relate to it. But speaking of Scott functionally, Harvath makes no secret that he's been able to maintain his physical prowess by taking a chemical concoction. America wants her warfighters to be at a peak performance regardless of age. But there's an ethical debate tied to that, to the use of performance-enhancing drugs, be it in sports or military or just even everyday civilians. Now, we clearly know how Norseman feels about it, but where does Brad Thor feel about that?
Listen, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I know guys that were so juiced up in Afghanistan. Anything that gives our guys the edge so they can take it to the bad guys and it's going to keep them alive, I'm all for it. This is so. I've got this whole debate that I deal with in the books about the Geneva and Hague Conventions, and you can't have you. I have a moral issue with rules. I'm the son of a Marine, right? So brought up with integrity and honesty and courage, all of these important character traits that make us as citizens of this nation special. So it's important to me to honor what makes America special and what makes its war fighters special. But I've also got a thing about cowards that hide behind women and children to launch attacks on our men and women, whether they're in the IC, whether they're in the military. So so zero problem with performance-enhancing drugs. In fact, I know a lot of guys that are on them, particularly some of the older guys that don't want to leave the action yet, and this is helping them stay in.
Right.
So you go Lance Armstrong all you want. I don't care, because if it gives you the edge on a guy from ISIS or some, you know, dirtbag GRU guy, I'm happy with it. That does not bother me at all. What's tough is when you start getting into, should we be extending the rules from the Geneva and Hague Conventions, all of them, to people who play by no rule book? That's where we start getting, for me, it gets interesting. It's a gray area. For some people, it's not gray at all. It's black and white, but it's a fun area to play with. What are we willing to do to keep our citizens and our nation safe, particularly if you've got people who will just do anything they can to cause harm? What are you willing to do to keep your family safe? If somebody kicked in the door in your house tonight, what are you going to do?
Anything.
Any damn thing.
Right. I got a whole bunch of beanbag rounds. They're not in my bedroom. So you're not getting beanbag rounds if you kick the door in. I'm not going to say wait or try to get to them. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no joke.
It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So I'm making it out to be simpler than it is. It's a really big deal. It's an issue we dealt with very heavily after 9/11. What do we stand for as a nation, and what are we willing to do? And are we any better than the bad guys if we stoop to their level and all that kind of stuff? The other interesting debate was that if you walked onto the floor on 9/11 of the New York Times and said, there's another plane coming, we think it's headed for your building, we've got a cab driver that we'd like to interrogate, can you provide us a bathroom and not listen to the screaming? They would have been like, here you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
The keys to the executive washroom. So, but it is a slippery slope, right? If we start breaking lots of rules, where does it end? And so that's why I have a protagonist who has a good moral compass. And he's somebody that's trusted with bending and sometimes breaking the rules because he isn't a sadist. He's not doing it necessarily because it brings him pleasure, but because it helps him complete his mission and it helps save lives. And that for me is every rule has an exception. And in the fictional world I've created, that's the exception.
Yep.
Kind of expanding on the last two questions, and this might be an answer to why people are responding the way they are to the last two books, is Near Dark and Backlash, but Near Dark in particular gave me a greater appreciation for what top operators face, because we're conditioned to think of them as machines and the rough men who stand ready to visit violence on those who would do us harm. Mm-hmm. But they're also, and they are that, but they're also people who sometimes have wives and sometimes have children, and they have dreams of the future and very real fears that they might not see that future. It seems like, and maybe it's my imagination, but it seems like you've honed in on that theme to a greater degree in the last couple novels. And I just turned 50 in May, so maybe that's why I'm really conscious of it. But is that a conscious or an unconscious choice on your part?
It's interesting because I've been at this for 20 years now. And so people that I knew who were really aggressively kicking in doors and shooting bad guys in the face are 20 years older now, right? So they're in their 40s, they're getting to 50 and all of this kind of stuff. And it is a question that they all wrestle with, and it is a big deal. In fact, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, we released the prologue and first chapter of Near Dark and put it up on my website. And I heard from a very cool former agency guy who I'm friends with, and he said, I got to tell you, he goes, and I don't like to use this word because I don't like all the PC connections to triggered. He said, but it triggered me. He said, I got to tell you, after 9/11, I disappeared from my family for a year. He said, I was gone for a year hunting bad guys. And he said, there was just something about the first two chapters of Near Dark. He said it brought it all back, flooding in the darkness and the probably one of the coolest things I've ever read. There was a translation of the Odyssey, Homer's The Odyssey. It was done, I think, in the late 90s. Somebody at the New York Times had done a review of it. It was really fascinating because I don't know if they were quoting somebody or if somebody had told them this, that if you are a war fighter leaving to go fight war, you should read the Iliad by Homer, because it will tell you what parts of your civilized self to leave at home and do not bring to the battlefield. Your return from the battlefield, you should be reading the Odyssey, because that's going to tell you what parts of the battlefield have to remain on the battlefield, that you cannot bring that back to society and to your family. And that's been something I've kind of been wrestling with too, is how do you transition? It's like American Sniper with Chris Kyle,
right?
Where Taya got so pissed that he's in a bar. She's like, wait, you're home? You're back in the United States? Yeah, my guy goes through what he calls Potomac therapy, where he's got a dock on the Potomac, and he goes down and gets drunk on the dock and kind of unpacks all this stuff that he had to compartmentalize while he was downrange. And it's a very real thing. So this idea of where your head has to be to take it to the enemy, and then where your heart has to be along with your head when you come home to your family and all that kind of stuff. It's really a delicate balance, and you can't just switch it on, switch it off.
So true. Sticking with that mortality theme, like all true athletes, and our warriors really, they're athletes. Time ultimately wins the longevity game. And Harvath appears to be kind of in his Tom Brady years here at a point of his career. I know for your fans, the reality holds a certain sadness that we can kind of see in the last few books. Do you share in their melancholy over the waning time clock that he's on, or is this an exciting time for you to consider the future possibilities of the series itself?
So I think with Spymaster, with his kind of boss, Reed Carlton, developing, that was an interesting, so I don't outline, by the way. Everything's organic for me. I do not outline. I want to have the experience writing the books that the readers are going to have reading them.
Wow.
So I want my palms to sweat, my heart to pound. I don't know what's going to happen next. Just like you don't know what's going to happen when you turn the page. That's the way it works for me. And it's really stressful, and it can be like pulling teeth. It's really, I joke that I come home at night, my wife can tell what the day has been, if it's a red wine night or a bourbon night, just by the expression on my face. And she always says, don't worry, you'll figure it out, whatever corner you've painted yourself into. I actually am having more fun writing the books now than ever before. And it's the most difficult it's ever been for me. Because I think Harvath is even more human. He's dealing with so many things that so many of us can relate to. And like I said, I know a lot of guys that are, there's that old expression, my children's godfather was a 5th Special Forces Group guy. And they had this expression that if you weren't cheating, you weren't trying, which is a great expression as per, carrying out the mission. You don't have to give the bad guys the advantage. If you can cheat and get what you got to do done, then do it. So is there melancholy there? There may be some, but I also think that tension of Harvath's mentor wanting Harvath, having handpicked him, groomed him to come in and take over that organization, and Harvath going, no, not going to do it.
Right.
I'm not done in the field. And that even surprised me as the author, because I said, we've been working Harvath towards this point where Ronin is one of my favorite movies. Okay. The dialogue in Ronin is absolutely fantastic. Robert De Niro and
Jean Reno.
Jean Reno, yeah, and Sean Bean. Natasha McElhone, absolutely fantastic. But when there's that one question, are you labor or are you management? Where they're getting to know each other in that kind of garage where they're all shacked up. And so this is interesting because Harvath is wrestling with, who does he owe greater loyalty to, his nation or himself? And he's being accused of being very selfish by choosing to keep going downrange, by taking the most dangerous assignments, by not being willing to give them off to younger people on the team, to not be working on developing the next wave of talent coming up. And he's just not ready to give it up yet. And I think it's something that we can all understand. And it makes him appealing, and it makes him human. One of the worst things you can ever be told about your characters is that they're two-dimensional. There's no depth to them. And I think I'm exploring more and more Harvath's depth in the novels, and it's been fun. It's been hard because I always worry, he's a tough guy, and how much self-awareness is he going to have about what he's feeling and all that kind of stuff. But so far, so good.
Yeah.
Well, he's definitely not two-dimensional, but in almost every single one of your 19 so far, 19. I mean, your 20th coming up. Harvath novels. You pair Scott with a strong female companion, and Near Dark.
Not window dressing.
Yeah, Near Dark's no different. Yeah. Scott gets to work with some beautiful. He gets to work with the beautiful and extremely capable Norwegian Solveig Kolstad. Did I say it right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Solveig Kolstad. Yep. So
many male writers, they have a hard time writing from a female perspective, but definitely not you. You've done it with the Athena project. What do you do to make sure that your female characters not only come across as authentic, but actually feel authentic?
Well, so 2 things. I am writing for a very small audience in my mind when I write female characters. I am surrounded by incredible women. So whether that's my wife, my agent, my editor, or my daughter, I have a son and a daughter. So I want that respect from the women in my life. I want to write characters that my daughter can look up to and want to be like. And the adult female friends and colleagues I have will look at me and say, that was solid. That was really good. You treated them well. I got interviewed once. My VP for my company is a brilliant woman. So like I said, I'm surrounded by all these brilliant women. And I was speaking like an author once when I got asked this question. And I was trying to convey, right away, I wanted to say they are not window dressing, because that's really important for me. These are strong, very capable female characters. And I was in an interview once, and I saw my VP, Yvonne, just kind of put her hand over her face when I said they are absolutely critical, because Harvath can't get to the climax without a solid woman in his life. And she just went like, oh.
Dude, look at that, edits.
Like, what?
Wrong choice of words, Brad.
I mean, I was using it in the, you have the climax and the denouement, and I was trying to, so it was poor phrasing on me. Had I made that statement today, I'd probably be, hung out to dry, taken to the guillotine. But it was meant in all sincerity that the female characters are really, really important to me. I have a lot of female readers, and I don't phone anything in. Any character worth putting in the book is worth developing, worth exploring. They are a hero in their own personal story. They have a reason they do everything they do. They have their ups, their downs. They have bad things that have happened to them. One of the greatest things that I learned about characters when I was at University of Southern California studying creative writing and film and TV production was we did this whole breakdown of that movie with Dustin Hoffman and so Kramer versus Kramer. Yeah. And Meryl Streep. So yeah, it wasn't Diane Keaton. It was Meryl Streep, right? Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman.
I think so, yeah.
So you had these two. So the teacher said, who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? And they said that was an example of really great character development where you found appealing things in both of them and also things that you didn't like in both of them. So that for me is important. The female characters have to be really, really solid because I want my daughter to love them. I want my female readers to love them. But I also want to be able to turn to the women in my life who I really respect and have them say to me, you rendered that character very, very well. Well done.
Well done indeed. Yeah. So I don't want to get too esoteric or in the weeds here, but your writing style, at least from my perspective, has evolved a bit from Lions Lucerne to Near Dark. I recently just reread, just to make sure I wasn't crazy, Lions Lucerne and The Path of the Assassin. Your Near Dark is shorter, crisper chapters. There's an economy of language in each line. I know you spent time at Hemingway's in the last couple of years, and so I don't know if his ghost whispered in your ear or if it's just your natural evolution as a writer. But do you sense that in your writing that you've really distilled it down to a? Yeah. No, there's no question. So this is a business. Writing is a business, and so you have competition. I don't see other books as competition. I see other forms of entertainment as a competition. Yeah. So whether it's Netflix, whether it's the internet. And so if you kind of tracked the increase in popularity of the net with my books, you will see that change. I think if we laid a graph out, you would see that change. It takes a lot of discipline to finish a book, right? Yep. So it takes commitment and all this kind of stuff. So I realized that, and Patterson was doing this too. Patterson was going with really short chapters, and I study what works in the marketplace. So I was looking at that. I was watching what friends were doing as far as what their entertainment consumption was like. And I thought to myself, okay, if I can do this shorter and have it pop, and leave people with a reason at the end of the chapter to not want to set the book down but start the next chapter, then I absolutely have to do that. I wanted the chapters to be easy. I wanted you to blaze through a Brad Thor book and not believe you were at the end already. It's entertainment. And so the days of sitting there with a 20-page chapter were just, I could see them already riding off into the sunset. So that's why I focused on doing it shorter, having cliffhangers at the end. And it's funny you should mention Hemingway. A couple of years ago, I stumbled across an app called the Hemingway app. And it's a great app where you can take what you've written and drop it in. It'll tell you what reading level, grade-wise, it's on. It'll tell you if you use too many adverbs, if the sentence is too long. I use it a lot in the beginning of writing my books when I'm just it's like a jazz musician sitting back down after a while. You need to kind of get that beat, that tempo. I do a book a year, but I take a little time off before I start writing again because I'm thinking about the book. So that Hemingway app, particularly in the beginning when I'm starting a book, is good because it reminds me to be crisp, concise. And then there's that piece of advice from Elmore Leonard that I always give young writers, which is leave out the parts that people skip.
Yeah. Heck yeah, bro.
It's good advice, right?
Well,
I remember I was telling. Go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
I was just saying, if you'll permit a compliment, this is the leanest, meanest writing out there right now. I mean, it's I was blown away by Near Dark. I really was.
What I was going to say, Brad, is when I finished reading it, I remember telling Mike and Sean, I was like, dude, there was no fat in this book whatsoever. Yeah. I'm like, it was, it was damn good writing.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was all muscle for sure.
Well, I forget who says this, but easy reading is damn hard writing, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You guys know that. Sure. And Dorothy Parker had a line that I love, which is, "I hate writing, but I love having written."
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, listen, it's my 20th book. I'm not afraid to let it all hang out. I mean, I enjoy my career, but it's hard. It's hard to, keep revealing parts of a main character, to keep your audience coming back year after year, to come up with plots that they haven't seen before. It's funny, Yvonne, my VP, likened what I do to having a theme park, an amusement park. And each year I build a different ride. And she argues with me because I say, this ride has to be better than last year. It's just the way I'm wired. And she said, no, people just want to come back and have an awesome ride with your protagonist, Scot Harvath. You're the one that wants to, constantly, you're the one that heaps on the stress by raising the bar in your mind. But if you give the audience what they've come for, there was a great book. I read a lot of new nonfiction. There was a great book called Skin in the Game, not Skin in the Game. It was called The Content Trap. And I see myself as a small business person, as an author. And this book said that one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they try to tweak the product in the hope of getting more customers. Which is unnecessary, because you've already got a great product, your customers like it. That's not the way to get more customers. And to put it in writing terms, Vince Flynn got interviewed years ago, and he had said, if you're batting 300 and know you're going into the Hall of Fame, why would you start changing up your swing? Now, if I had listened to that, I wouldn't have started doing what I'm doing. At the time, it sounded like great advice, but I'm just very driven. I'm a perfectionist. I want to get better. It's the son of a Marine. It's don't ever rest on your laurels. And I don't work for Simon & Schuster. I work for the readers. And so my promise to them is always, I'm going to give you something better every year. I don't know how, like right now, I can't tell you. We're going to sit down hopefully 12 months from now, and I'll go, God, remember last year during COVID 2020, I had no idea what the next book was going to be.
Brad Thor has no idea the next book's headlines.
Yeah.
He'll figure it out along the way.
A year from now, we've got something. So, I mean, it's been really rough for Harvath the last 2 books.
Yeah, for sure.
Do I put him through that again? I don't know. I don't know that I want to grind him like that again. Maybe he's earned a little breathing space. Maybe it's all about the story, and, I'll figure out what his personal stakes are. But I mean, man, he's really just, it's like being dragged down, 10 miles of gravel road. It's just been rough on him.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of alluded to it in a bit. And like Sean said, your writing has, met or exceeded the market all along the way. Are there certain authors, certain authors that you look to for tips? I know you mentioned a couple already. Or are there books that you tend to study to lean on? How specifically are you improving your craft?
It's a great question, because that's what I spend my off time doing, is reading books about writing. So whether it's about character development, I wish I busted out my stacks of books that I have in the office, because I've got so many books on writing. And I also dip into screenwriting books, Sean. So there's, Save the Cat and all this kind of stuff. In fact, I don't know if you ever, because you were a screenwriter, right?
Yes.
Still are. So I don't know if you ever read Save the Cat, which I think, so one of my favorite scenes, and they talk about it in Save the Cat, and this informed the opening of Backlash, and I'll explain to the audience what this is. So there was this Al Pacino movie, Sea of Love. Al Pacino and
love that movie.
Barkin, Ellen Barkin, who still looks fantastic today. Her TV series with her dirtbag criminal sons is a great... I forget the name of it. It's like Beasts of the Jungle or something like that. Anyway, in the beginning of that movie, the NYPD does this sting They allegedly it happens every year, but it can't because criminals are pretty stupid. So maybe they do this every year. But so guys that have basically violated parole and haven't shown up to meet with their POs and stuff like that get sent a note basically saying, you've won Yankees tickets and we'd love to have you come down. We're doing a breakfast. You can come and pick up your tickets and meet some of the players. And they get some Yankees to show up and all this kind of stuff. And Pacino pretends to be an old Yankee. So anyway, they get all these idiots in the room and then they arrest them because they've not abided by the terms of their parole. So they're arresting all these guys in the ballroom of this hotel, and Pacino walks out into the hallway and sees a guy who's late for this event, a guy who violated his parole, but he's got his son with him. Ugh. And Pacino just pulls back his jacket just only so the father can see his badge. And the guy goes like this, and Pacino goes, "Catch you later." It's such a great line.
Great.
And so I did that with Backlash last summer, where there was a plane going down. It's a Russian plane. They've got Harvath on it. These are bad guys. And there's a loadmaster on the plane. It's not one of the guys that kidnapped him. This is a guy who just happens to be on the aircraft in Russia. And this guy is telling the Russian military intelligence guys that have Harvath, you gotta put an oxygen mask on him. You've got to allow him to get in the crash position and all this kind of stuff. So when the plane crashes and this guy's alive, Harvath does what he can to help the guy. And that for me came from Sid Field in the whole Save the Cat moment. So I try to find lessons wherever I can. And so I read everything I can about writing fiction, but I also look at the screenwriter stuff too, because I think some of the screenwriting stuff is even tighter than the novel stuff. And for writing thrillers, that tightness and that action and everything is sometimes the screenwriting tips speak to me more than just kind of the general fiction tips in the fiction writing books.
Yeah. I recommend Adventures in the Screen Trade and Which Lie Did I Tell? More Adventures in the Screen Trade for the same reason.
Which Lie Do I Tell?
I'm enjoying writing my first novel way more than I enjoyed any of my screenplays. But the lessons I learned from those screenplays are one of the reasons that it's a little bit, the plotting itself is a little bit easier just because I got used to plotting very, strict rules, as you said. So, but yeah, I love that movie, by the way, and that scene.
Yeah.
So.
And that soundtrack, they just play that song over and over again. Sea of Love. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Oh yeah.
They think he's Phil Rizzuto, right? That one guy thinks that
Phil Rizzuto. Yeah.
Rizzuto, oh my God.
Who are you? I'm Phil Rizzuto.
I know when Sean and Mike and I, we talk about writing, we mention chapters or scenes that we've cut from the story, but saved for ideas of using it in another story. And I can only imagine the chapters that you've cut from the storyline from that you love, but just didn't fit in that particular story. But did they ever make it into like another different story? Like, was something from Lions Lucerne end up in like Code of Conduct? Did you ever cut something and then put it into something else?
There is no cutting room floor in my office. Every single chapter reveals something that is necessary to go to the next chapter. So I have never cut chapters. I joke that my wife she's got this red pen and I call her Zorro, and she'll go through. So and she'll scratch out like paragraphs and stuff. One of the biggest challenges with writing a repeat character, a franchise character, is you want each book to stand alone. I don't want anybody to go into their local bookstore and say, oh, wow, okay, this Thor guy, well, do you have his first book? Oh, you don't? Okay, well, then I can't read him unless I start at the beginning. I would never want that to happen and have him go pick up somebody else. So the challenge for me is making each book a standalone, and to bring a brand new reader. Every time I write a new book, I expect that a certain percentage of the readers are going to be coming to me for the very first time. So the balance you have to strike is, how do you give a little bit about Harvath's background, your protagonist's background, so that the brand new reader feels like, okay, I'm rooted in this, I know who this person is, but you don't bore the existing readers who have been with you since from the beginning. So that's very important. So I try to, that is probably the biggest thing that my wife cuts out of the manuscript, because in the beginning I'm furiously writing and I don't realize I've said it once, and she's like, okay, you don't need to say it again. We get it. We understand he was with SEAL Team 6, and then he went over to the protective detail for POTUS on the Secret Service. And then POTUS said, you shouldn't be on defense, you should be on offense, and set him loose. So, and even now I've kind of really pared back because he's been through so many different programs and done different things in different places that I don't put it all in. If you want to know all that stuff, you can go back and read earlier books, but just a little bit. So, but as far as getting rid of chapters, I don't have that much fat that I can get rid of. I mean, I'm trying to keep it so lean. And this is, again, back to I don't outline, right? So this is me having the experience you're going to have reading the book. I'm having it writing it. So I'm being lean just by process of going through there. Now, I can only imagine what it's like to outline and to know when you come into your office, okay, I've got to get him. He's been shot 3 times. He's got the briefcase full of bearer bonds, and he needs to get to the bank or the train station in Zurich in 20 minutes. Yeah. It'd be nice to come in and have that all laid out in the morning, but it takes the life out of me. I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, do you maintain a Bible of sorts that you keep detailed records or like notes filled with background info on the characters you've created?
My wife did it for me. She started a long time ago, said, I'm going to do you a favor. And it's recipe boxes with 3x5 cards. Wow. So this summer, my son is making extra money we're subscribing to a contact management database that you would use for sales leads. And he's digitizing all of these recipe cards so that they'll be in the cloud so that I could just hop online and say, for instance, I have an Easter egg in Near Dark. There is a character I bring back from 8 books ago. Yep. And you don't need to have read Foreign Influence to appreciate this character. In fact, I go into deeper detail now than I ever did in Foreign Influence. But if you've read Foreign Influence, it'll be fun because this character and a husband, there you go.
There it is.
Or that's Foreign Agent.
Oh, where's my foreign?
So
I don't know.
Foreign Influence.
It's in there.
There you go.
Yeah. So
we're Brad Thor fans.
You guys are great. So it's fun for me that I was thinking, and I was like, oh wait, where I had this character and I remembered the name, and so I needed some information. I couldn't get a hold of my wife. She was someplace, and she's got the recipe boxes, and I didn't know where they were in the house. So I had to have Yvonne, who works with me, actually go on Amazon and plug in some keywords to skim. They let you do that in the ebook versions. Right. So anyway, so my son is digitizing all the stuff for me this summer. But yeah, I do have a Bible. It's basically a database.
What's his? Because my kid would like to know this. Like, what's his salary? My kid's always asking that. He's 10. He's like, Pop, how much you paying me to do
Wi-Fi.
this? It's a la carte. You know, you detail the car, you get X amount of money. Right. You help Dad clean his office, you get X amount of money. We haven't settled on what the data input is going to be.
It goes right to Fortnite. Oh my!
Yeah, exactly. It goes and pays for all that stuff.
Yeah.
Rainbow Six and.
Well, Brad, you're no stranger to the Hollywood dance. People have been circling Harvath since pretty much book 1, I think. And I know the Athena project has had a lot of really close calls as far as being made. But in this time frame, it seems that TV adaptations seem to be outpacing features when it comes to bestsellers, whether it's Bosch, The Night Manager, The Little Drummer Girl, Jack Carr, who you helped give a start, the Terminal List, coming out soon. I know I have my own preference, but do you, in a perfect world, do you have your preference of how Scot Harvath comes to life?
Yeah, I do. So I joke with people. So Sean, you would understand this probably better than most. It is amazing how many things go into turnaround. And I joke that studios are like the savannah, and when a new lion comes in, it kills all the cubs in the pride. For a town filled with so many beautiful people, I have kissed every frog in Hollywood. Yeah. So it's interesting. Just as we were going into the new year, we were under option, and I don't announce anymore. I'm tired of doing stuff where people get to put out a great press release, whether it's a producer or whatever, And then I get all my fans excited and nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
They option the books and then nothing happens. And so we've been to the altar a bunch of times. We were under option. We renewed it multiple times, and nothing happened. And they came back to us and said, well, we want to renew again and a whole new deal. And I just said, no, I'm not doing it. You guys have had enough time. And we had several other offers. We've always got other offers hovering. Sure. And I said, I'm taking a different offer. And so we had a mega producer. I guarantee that if I told you this producer was, you've seen the producer's even most recent stuff. And the producer came to us and said, listen, this is what I do. This is my background. This is how I get these deals made. And this is why I think this is going to be perfect and what I think we can do with it. And I was like, great. Okay. So how do we do this? And he said, well, I package these things myself. I don't go to CAA or WME and have them package it with just their talent there. He said, I do it. I put it together. I know everybody. I've got deals with everybody. And I said, okay, so what would be the first move if you and I work together? And he's a lovely guy, super smart, very un-Hollywood, super personable, really humble. And he said, well, we want to attach a director. And I said, okay, do you have some directors in mind? He said, yeah, I do, but it's important for me that you're participating in this process. He said, because basically with 19 Harvath thrillers, it's like the Marvel universe. I mean, we've got a ton of material to work with here. And he said, okay, here are the 3 directors that I think would be, you pick any one of these 3. So I know them all, good relationships, worked with all of them. Any one of these 3, you'd be great. And so he gives me the list, and at the top of the list is the one guy that I want. And I said, I love this guy. I think he's probably the most brilliant action director out there. And I said, can you make this happen? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't I get you guys on the phone together and let's see if you click. And he got us on the phone together, and we got along like a house on fire. I mean, you would lose your mind. This guy is such a huge director. If I told you right now, you'd be like, "Oh my God!" And
you could tell us. You could tell us.
Nobody watches.
Tell us.
No. So what we're looking to do is a hybrid thing where we can actually do episodic TV and feature length stuff. So a combination. So you'd watch anywhere like Night Manager, which I think was like 6 to 8 episodes, and maybe it's 10, 12, or 14, and then you get a feature length thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the big thing now is we're talking to showrunners. That's the big thing, so that you've got the writer's room and the TV, the episodic television side nailed down. And then once we've got our showrunner on board, we'll put together the pitch and decide who we're going to go to, whether it's a streamer or what we're going to do. But the real challenge is, it's not a challenge. It's actually a blessing for us, is that my stuff is so international. We don't need to film in the United States. So if COVID's still going crazy and we want to go to a low or no COVID country, and the country agrees, if we quarantine the entire crew and everybody here, the above the line and below the line people that we're going to bring here for 14 days and then do another 14 days on the other side, we bring docs with us and all that kind of stuff. That's what we're kind of looking at doing, knock on wood. So we'll see what happens, because the Screen Actors Guild now has all these rules about actors and insuring actors, and no insurance company is going to give you COVID insurance on an actor.
Right, that's true.
In the United States. But the minute you take them outside the U.S., my understanding is the Screen Actors Guild rules don't apply. It's the rules of the country you go to shoot in.
Interesting.
So we'll see what happens, but it's the best team I have ever lined up with. If all of the work that I did that didn't, and by the way, at Warner Brothers, the screenplay that got written for Athena Project is probably one of the best screenplays I've ever read. And it's just it's too bad that didn't get made, but everything happens for a reason. All works out for the best.
Sure.
And if all those kind of experiences, and everybody's got these in Hollywood. Everybody's got them. Back to the Future was around for so long before it ever got made, and it was a huge success. So I just don't allow myself to get overexcited. My team is really excited now. My entertainment attorney is like, oh, these guys are awesome, and they're just very genuine, nice people, and we all get along well. So when we place this thing, our watchwords are, this has got to be bigger than Bond. That's the way we're going at this. This has got to be bigger than the James Bond franchise. That's how we want to do it. Budgets, the talent, all that kind of stuff. Right down to, but not including, the lead character. because we believe that the project should make the star, not the star making the project.
God, I love that.
I don't want you to see an actor and say, oh, I liked him better when he was in that thing.
Oh.
This is going to be Harvath. The first time you see this actor, you're going to say, okay. And that's what he's going to, just like Connery in the Bond movies.
Right.
I'm so glad you said that. When Jack Reacher came out, aside from Tom Cruise's size, I always knew that it was going to be a Tom Cruise vehicle, not a Jack Reacher vehicle, and it made no sense to me. It's like you find an actor who fits the character, and then you make him a star because of the vehicle. And
because of the vehicle,
you know, how many millions of books have you sold? The audience is there. If you do a faithful adaptation and you give them a Harvath that they recognize from the books, you're going to make your money. You're going to make tons of money, and you'll gain new movie fans, but you won't lose the book fans. I always thought that was counterintuitive how they approach that.
I agree with you. And what's really nice about the team that I'm working with, and we're talking about Oscars and just huge box office. I mean, this is a superstar dream team. They have all said, listen, you've got to be fully in on this because these are your books. You know this universe better than anybody else. So you need to be involved in the writer's room. You need to be involved in every element of this. You know, we're not looking for you to tell us how to make movies, but we are bringing you in for your storytelling ability to make sure that this stuff, you know, we want to know, wait a second, if we're going to do this 8 episodes from now, you have to do this in episode 1. Because I always talk about writing being like a still pool of water, just writing a book. And you drop a pebble in and it ripples.
Right.
But when you write a book, you're dropping multiple pebbles in, and you've got to be cognizant of where the ripples intersect.
Right.
So now you multiply this over 19 books. I mean, it's a great, we've got so much stuff, and that's part of our appeal in our package is that there's so many potential. You can spin off the Troll, my character, the Troll.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we all
there's
love him.
so many different things we can do that there's a ton of content here. It is like getting the Marvel universe over, 19 Harvath books and 1 Athena Project book.
Yeah.
Brad, do it.
Brad, with traditional publishing, the traditional book tour, I mean, COVID just slammed the brakes on what authors have been doing for years. Do you see the marketing efforts eventually going back to the old ways once we're cleared, or what's your prediction on any sort of fundamental shift in how book promotions proceed forward, and maybe in what way?
It's a great question. So I actually think this is going to be fantastic because the virtual events we're going to do for my book tour, you don't have to get in your car on a Wednesday or Thursday night, drive down to the local bookstore, park your car, come in. You could do it from home. In fact, one of the stories I had heard was that early on, so Stephen King and Jennifer Weiner moved back. They didn't delay, but they sped up. So they moved forward their releases when we went into lockdown and everything. And Jennifer did a virtual event that, and I'm sure it's like the fish story. Every time it's been told to me, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, but the numbers were incredible. They were in the thousands of people that tuned in, like, oh, I've heard of Jennifer Weiner. I've seen her book at the pool or the lake, or a lot of my friends love to read Jennifer Weiner. So I'll actually tune in for this. That's our hope, is that people who might not be predisposed to actually come to a book signing in person will do the virtual event. Will say, hey, you know what? I like this Thor guy. I like what I'm hearing about his books and everything. I'm going to give him a try. So I actually think that this could be a blessing in disguise in that listen, the wear and tear on me, I can do 2 or 3 events a day because I don't have to get on an airplane. I'm no Mary Higgins Clark. I'm not getting on a private jet. Even Cannell, when he left his TV stuff to do books and had a private jet, that's not me. I'm getting up and I'm, standing in the TSA line and all that kind of stuff at dark 30 going to the next city. So I actually think it's going to be good. I think virtual events are going to be great. We're doing a hybrid so we teamed up with Poison Pen, the great independent in Scottsdale, to do signed books. And then all of the other, and we're doing an event with them the night before on Monday night, July 20th. And then on Tuesday, July 21st, when the book drops, for the next 8-9 days, we've got multiple events every day. So if you want to attend one, watch one, we got them in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. And hopefully the reach of those venues, they'll bring in people that say, oh, I'll listen to this guy Thor. And maybe it affords me an even bigger audience, an even better chance to win over readers than I would have had had I gone to that town and gone to that bookstore or that library and done it the traditional way. So I'm thinking positively.
Yeah.
Brad, you've given advice to other writers, and one I've heard you say to aspiring writers, don't give up. But what other advice would you give to a struggling writer who wants to get published?
Well, so it's I have a big thing, and I always get in trouble when I talk about self-publishing. I think everybody or most writers that I've talked to would love to be at a Simon & Schuster or something like that. That's the thing that they'd love to do. I think, the joke is, and I said this to Jack Carr, I said, the difference between a published author and a non-published author is the published author never quit. I said, I know that it's going to be tough for you, Jack, as a SEAL, because you guys quit all the time. So, and he laughed. He knew I was just tweaking.
Wait, how's Brad Thor still alive?
And SEALs don't quit. That's why the joke was so funny, is because SEAls don't quit. That's the mentality. Never quit is actually a SEAL maxim. So that really rang true with Jack. And he was glad to get that advice. But listen, if you're going to self-publish or you want to go with one of the big publishers, that's totally up to you. I mean, I'm never going to say go one way or go the other. But if you've got a story worth telling, find the best avenue you can to tell it. I guess I've watched some people that it's salesmanship. I've watched some people that have given up on wanting to be with a mainstream publisher because it was hard. Yeah, it's hard. It really is tough. But the key into the mainstream publisher is not banging on the mainstream publisher's door. It's getting an agent who loves your work and then will be your champion with an editor. Who the editor says, oh, I know Tim Brewster finds great talent. Hey, Tim, what do you have? Well, I've got this new author. So my greatest resource when I was looking for an agent was the Writer's Digest Guide to Literary Agents, okay? So this thing will show you lit agents that are looking for new writers in every single category. The biggest bullshit myth that agents put out that I absolutely tell writers don't listen to is agents only want you to query one agent at a time.
Yeah.
And I think that's garbage advice, because if it takes one agent 3 months to get back to you on your query to turn you down, and you have to go through 12 agents before you find one, that's 3 years out of your life.
Yeah.
So I tell people, pick 5, 10, 15 agents that you think would be a great agent and shotgun it. And you know what? The agent that realizes you're a great writer and they want to have you first, that's the one who wins. That is competition. That is the true sense of a free market economy. So I don't believe in this one agent at a time.
Agree. Great advice, people. Absolutely.
There it is.
Well, Brad, you have survived the main portion. It's very important that I clarify the main portion of the interview.
Portion.
So
Cheers.
we toast you for that right away.
Okay.
Because not everybody gets there. Well, I think everybody has survived so far. Some people better than others. But now we do the lightning round. And as I grew up with a mother who always said, think before you speak. This is the portion of the show where you don't have to.
We prefer you
don't
don't
all the time.
Do I need to go get another bourbon?
You probably
do. But actually, I'm gonna take it easy on you. Anybody that reads Brad Thor novels, if you're really paying attention, you know that Brad likes music. He lives in Music City, but that's not the biggest clue. Brad likes music. There's all sorts of Easter eggs of music in all the novels, and Scot Harvath likes music. So I'm going to start out with, what is the best non-Parliament funk song?
Roller Coaster by the Ohio Players.
Roller Coaster by the
All
Ohio
right, write it down,
just like
people.
that. I don't even know that
Right
one.
now.
I'm going to look it up.
I'm just going to predict that the day after
Oh,
this
yeah,
show,
all right.
the day after this show goes live, that's probably going to be the most
Big spike.
downloaded song.
Yeah.
on the show.
Spotify gonna down.
Okay, so you wake up with a virtuoso's ability to play any instrument. What instrument do you play and what band do you join?
Piano, and I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Cole Porter and the Great American Songbook.
Yeah.
If I could have any talent other than being an author, it would be to be able to sing, and I can't sing. And I'm just a huge Cole Porter fan. So I would be playing either boogie woogie piano with some group or be in kind of a big band situation. So it'd be something kind of in that area. So I can't say I'd be with a particular band, but I know the genre that I like.
Good enough. Okay, my last one is I'm talking, when I say popular music, I'm talking pop, rock, country, R&B, not classical, not Cole Porter. So who do you think the best singer in popular music, history or present, is in those genres?
You're not talking Cole Porter, Great American Songbook, so I can't say Nat King Cole.
No, I would. I love Nat King Cole, so I'll give you Nat King Cole.
Okay, I mean, most beautiful voice ever, and somebody invited him to a cocktail party to have cocktails, ostensibly, and then would you mind playing a few songs? And he was such a great guy that he didn't want to embarrass the hostess, so he did it, and then he sent him a bill afterwards.
What?
Nat King Cole is one of my favorites. Sam Cooke's my favorite all-time vocalist, but Nat King Cole's pretty close.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love Dinah Washington and Nat King Cole and Ella Fitzgerald. I'm born late. Born too late.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
I sometimes
Chris,
feel
you're
like
up.
that. Hey, Brad, you're a contestant on Beat Bobby Flay. I actually love that show.
Okay.
What's your signature dish that you're going to make to beat Bobby?
Chicken puttanesca.
The fact that he couldn't even say that.
and it was like this, by the way. It was like
he's thought about it.
Like, I already
It was
know.
so quick
I already
that we
know
need to
it.
know your second best dish.
Yeah, right. And here's the other question: do you win? Do you beat him?
You know what? I don't know. I've never. It's funny. I checked into a hotel right behind Bobby Flay once. I was overseas, and it was really cool to see him. And I loved that when he signed the guest book, he said, "Eat American," and we were in Italy. And that was like his catchphrase. He signed in this.
He's got some big cojones on him, brother.
Yeah, I bet they're spitting in his food for his entire vacation. Like the Griswolds going to Paris. Microwaving the entrees and putting a little French flag in there. There you go, Bobby Flay.
Rusty.
Rusty. Russ? Yes, Dad.
Yes, Dad. All right. You mentioned your wife several times, so I'm going to ask this question. If you had to write a fortune cookie for the saying inside the fortune cookie for your wife, what would it say?
Oh, wow. So now I got to get wise with my...
yeah, you do.
Nah.
Or no.
Well, I always joke. I always rip on the Hippocratic Oath. First do no harm, and there's the whole physician heal thyself, and whatever. I've even got even a hangnail. I'm like, physician heal thy husband. I like to play on that one. Damn it, fortune cookies. And what would I give to her? Oh, now you guys have got me stumped.
Yep,
it's okay. I think physician heal thy husband's pretty damn good.
That's a good one, right?
That is a good one.
Yeah, good.
My wife said
Physician heal thy husband.
Brad, we're definitely saving you. Next question. Did you ever send I'm from New Jersey. So did you ever send Chris Christie a signed copy of Foreign Agent?
It was a Photoshop.
I know it was, but
we were laughing. I was laughing with my art director, and he says to me, he goes, Brad, looks like Governor Christie's having a great time on the beach, but you know what's missing? And I said, a good book? He goes, give me 5 minutes. We put it out, and only 2 networks reached out to me to say, is that real? And I said, no, if you zoom in on it, it's like the hands of a woman fashion model. They don't match the body. But people ran with it. And my tweet was, I think I'm the only person in America that doesn't hate Chris Christie. And it was great. He's sitting in the lawn chair with a Brad Thor book.
Loved it.
How the media ran with that, thinking he was really reading a Brad Thor book on the shutdown beaches of Jersey.
Yeah, after he closed all the beaches. Yeah, it was. I loved it.
Chris, you missed it, but he asked what exit you live off of in Jersey.
Oh my gosh.
That's what everybody says in Jersey, right?
Jersey. Yeah, 114.
Okay.
Yeah.
Means nothing to me. I just know to say what I
just know to ask.
It's the Jersey Shore. It's Middletown, New Jersey.
I'm from
folks.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the whole Saturday Night Live
Saturday Night
thing
Live.
with Joe Piscopo?
Yep.
Yeah. You from Jersey? I'm from Jersey.
Yeah, you from? Yeah, everybody's from Jersey. Forget about it.
All right. I guess I'm up here. In a moment of midlife crisis, you decide to go back to your beginnings as a television host.
Okay.
Which game show from any era would be your choice?
Love Connection.
Love Connection.
That would be great.
Let's see
2 and 2. 2 and 2.
2 and 2 with a big gold Rolex. 2 and 2. Chuck.
Oh, man. All right. If you could go back in time, which famous military engagement would you like to be fully witnessed of?
Wow. Which military engagement? The first one that popped into my head was Waterloo, but I want to be comfortable while I'm watching this.
Such a
I'm
nail.
trying to think of it. Yeah.
Midway.
Yeah, Midway.
Bull Run, maybe. Bull Run.
Bull Run. Yeah. Just need a little shade.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you, probably, particularly because of stuff that didn't make it in Near Dark, just on the research side of stuff. I'd really be interested. I love Band of Brothers, the whole Saving Private Ryan and Storming the Beaches of Normandy. There's some of those little things. Dunkirk was very interesting. I think probably the coolest thing, and that's not necessarily a military engagement, but I just so love. I'm reading The Splendid and the Vile now by Eric Larson. And I love Eric. He's such a
amazing
great writer. In the Garden of Beasts is my editor's husband was the editor on In the Garden of Beasts, and it is one of the only books I've ever read without a single error, not a typo, not a grammatical mistake. It's just fantastic. So I think I'd probably like some of the World War II stuff, particularly D-Day. I think would be absolutely fascinating to see. Yeah. Tough to watch because of the loss of life. I wouldn't like that part of it. But if there's one moment, it would be just coming into Paris with the Nazis on the run and just seeing the faces of the French so happy to have been liberated. That'd be pretty damn cool.
All right, cool. And my last question is, all right, and we alluded just a little bit to this. Jack Carr hands you the Hemingway typewriter that he was recently gifted with, and you grab it, and Ernest Hemingway appears as an apparition in front of you, and you have time to ask him one question before he disappears. What do you ask Ernest Hemingway?
Were you really a spy for the Russians?
Ah, there you go. That would have been mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess we're good.
There it is.
He not only survived, he thrived during the lightning round.
That's good.
But ladies and gentlemen, by Near Dark, we are very grateful. We are very grateful for you spending time with us tonight, Brad. We know your schedule's crazy.
Oh, this was a blast.
Well, you're welcome here anytime. And
anytime, day or night.
We will do whatever.
I can't wait to come back next year. Right now, I don't know what next year's book is. I can't wait to be at that point.
let's do it next week, and we'll just talk about what.
Scot Harvath goes on a golfing trip to relax.
Right.
Vegas, baby.
There it is. Starts there. I don't know. Fishing trip, golfing trip.
It's Caddyshack meets Die Hard.
Right.
I would buy that.
Yeah, that's something good.
Who wouldn't watch that?
I would. Dude, anyway, awesome. Thanks, Brad.
We thank you, Brad, for coming on the show.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Take care.
The term greatness is often overused, but tonight we had on the great Brad Thor. And tomorrow, his 20th novel, Near Dark, hits bookshelves. Buy it. And every Monday, join us when we have the best novelist telling the best stories on the best podcast in the genre, The Crew Reviews. We'll see you next week.
There it is.
Boom! It's out of the park, people. This Sean Cameron and his fantastic Crew Review shirt. Where can we get those shirts?
OMG.
And that baby face.
Look at that haircut. I love that hair.
Are you done?
Here we go. In 3, 2,
Yeah.
And every Monday, you can join us for another great guest talking about books or whatever. Start over. Damn it.
We're at the end. You should have just said boys.
So close. I was so close. I knew,
and he didn't get it.
I improvised on something. Whatever. All right, here we go.
Take 2 and me.
Out, pick it up, and join us every Monday on the Crew Reviews when we have fantastic guests every week.
How many times?
Hold on.
2. Game.
The term greatness is often overused, but tonight we had the great Brad Thor and his book. Pissed.
We ruined him.
I'm pissed now.
I'm you.
Beg the difference.
Just bleep it out. Just bleep, 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 bleep. My whole speech, just bleep it out. No matter what I say, bleep out the.
I love you, Sean.
I love you.
All right.
Join us every Monday for a great author telling great stories on the best novel podcast.
3, 2, game.
The term greatness is often overused, but tonight we had on the great Brad Thor, and tomorrow his 20th novel, Near Dark, hits bookstands. Join us every Monday when we have the best novelist talking about.
Because you gotta say.
Let's start
best.
over. I got it. Here we go.
You got it?
3,
All right.
2, 1.
Go.
The term greatness is often overused, but tonight we had on the great Brad Thor, and tomorrow his 20th novel, Near Dark, hits bookstands. Buy it. And every Monday, join us for the best novelist telling the best stories.
What do you want to say?
I know what I want to say. I just am rushing.
Say it out loud, though. Say it out loud. What do you want to
The
say?
best novelist telling the best stories on the best podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful.
There it is.